Hey guys, and welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast, brought to you by Carolina Electrical Services. For all your electrical needs, please call Jacob Marlowe at 704-320-7357, and he'll get you squared away. Josh and Anthony are here as always. I'm back from the dead, 2 days out, but I'm back. We've got a lot to talk about with the Syracuse win Tuesday night. We got a tough road game going at the Clemson, so we're going to go ahead and dive right into the opening tip, brought to you by Rodan and Fields. For all your skincare needs, please call Executive Joy Marlowe at 803-804-0200. And today we just got some fun little nuggets. Today would have been Dean Smith's 88th birthday. So happy birthday, Coach, up in heaven. Hope you're looking over us and this team as we continue to progress during this ACC season. With the win Tuesday night against Syracuse, Carolina is 11-1 in their last 12 ACC games. That's the best mark since winning 12 straight all the way back in 2014. Luke May was announced earlier this week as an ACC Player of the Week, the second time he's won that award this season. And I think he's now 6th all-time for Carolina players with that award. So for a guy who's a preferred walk-on to be that highly on ACC Player of the Week, pretty remarkable. And then it was announced earlier that the rematch with Duke on March 9th is a 6 p.m. tip time, with ESPN going to be televising that game, and we assume that College Game Day will be there for that one. We should know that this Saturday. So we're going to go ahead and get to the Syracuse recap. And Anthony, I just want to get your initial thoughts on the 93-85 Carolina win.
Clearly not the best game that we played defensively against a team that really wasn't one of the better offensive teams in the ACC. But again, this team, you see it. The numbers, efficiency-wise, on the offensive end weren't fantastic, but you score 93 points. They shot 37 free throws. That's the most aggressive that I've seen them go into the lane maybe all season. And, I was pleasantly surprised with what we saw from them the other night. I thought that, everybody's kind of, starting to see that if you get the ball inside, if you start driving the lane, we got the physical ability to finish at the rim, even through contact. And, that's something that I'm really, happy to see, especially with the fact that we're not shooting it great, especially from the outside over the last few games. So I was pleasantly surprised overall with the way that, we played on the offensive end. Defensive end, I thought part of it was that we could have played a little bit better. I thought that we were a little bit over-aggressive with some of the doubles early in the game. But I also think that Syracuse just really shot the ball well. So, that's going to happen. You're playing in the ACC, which is the toughest conference in America when it comes to college basketball. If anybody questions that, they know absolutely nothing about college basketball. So, I'm not going to be mad about it. There are probably some Tar Heel fans out there that didn't think it was that great of a performance. But the Syracuse team, like we said in the preview, is battling for that final bye spot when it comes to the ACC tournament. So they're not going to go down easy. I think, you take away what you can from it, but I think overall a solid win for Carolina. And again, it keeps us, tied for the lead right now in the ACC, which, again, you look at the schedule for Virginia and you say, well, how tough actually, is it? Is there a chance that they can lose? The main thing is keep the pressure on them and force them to have to win these games. Don't lose a game like that and end up, pretty much locking it up for Virginia.
Yeah, we talked in the preview. Syracuse wasn't going to come in and be affected by the environment. They did go to Cameron Indoor and win. And even though they're not fighting for their NCAA lives like they have been the past couple years, they have a lot to play for that number 4 seed in that double bye in the ACC tournament. And I'm with you. I think it was just one of those nights where they made shots. We might have been a little late on a couple rotations and could have been better defensively, but they also made some threes that nothing we could really do about when they're shooting them that deep. That's what you want them, and they just happened to make them. I really thought the rebounding disparity, we got rebounded them by 21 of 46 to 25, and then we got to the foul line 37 times. We converted 34 of them. Meanwhile, Syracuse was only 13 to 23. That's how you can find ways to win games when you only shoot 40% from the field and 30% from three, and you allow your opponent to shoot 48% from the field and then 45% from three. I think when Jim Boeheim finally retires, we'll have nightmares of his teams getting out-rebounded by Carolina, because I think the stat I saw from Dagon Box Scores was in the last 8 meetings, we've rebounded 48% of our misses. That's absurd.
Yeah, you're right about that. They were fantastic the other night on the glass, and that was one of the keys to the game. You know, Syracuse was a smaller team coming in, and and I mean, I kind of expected it. You know, with them, they're really a team that either they're going to lock you down with the 2-3 zone, or they're not really going to be able to do a whole lot, because I don't think they're really the greatest on-ball defending team. But I think that Carolina did exactly what they had to do. And honestly, I didn't think that they took advantage of the middle of the zone as well as they've done in the last few seasons. I really think that, you know, they were able to knock down the shots that they needed to outside. It was that was helped by good ball movement at times to open up the outside shots. And I really thought they did a great job of getting in the low post, which is something that's never easy to do against that 2-3 zone. So you really just got to give credit to, the players on the court, and also Roy Williams, who came in with a fantastic game plan, as one would expect from a Hall of Fame coach, and did exactly what he had to do to beat a Syracuse team that is, I'm pretty sure they're going to make the tournament. There's still some people that are kind of, a little bit mixed on their feelings as to whether or not they'll be in. I think that team's going to make it in, and as we've seen before, they have the ability to make a deep run, and I think, because they play that good fundamental 2-3 zone, I feel like they are going to make a deep run. So I think Carolina should be very happy with what they saw the other night, and now you turn to Clemson, which it's not going to be easy on the road, and in their new arena. It'll be the first time we actually play in their new arena.
Yeah, we do go to Clemson Saturday, and this Clemson team they're kind of where Syracuse has been the last couple years. They're kind of fighting for their NCAA tournament lives. They got a big road win last night at Pittsburgh to kind of keep them in the conversation. And this was a team that last year made the Sweet 16 and returned a bunch of guys from that team. In the preseason, they were one of the teams talked about as a team to contend for that 4th spot in the ACC. Just hasn't gone their way this year as of right now, but they've got guys that are more than capable of playing well. They beat us last year in their building. And like I said, a lot of these guys are back. Marquise Reed is back. He's averaging 19 points a game. Elijah Thomas is their man on the glass, averaging nearly 8. And then Shelton Mitchell is their guy running their offense, about a little over 3 assists. So this is always one of those places in the ACC that Carolina gets, the home team's best game. It'll probably be a capacity crowd with it being a 6 o'clock tip, and we're really going to need to bring a better effort on offense and defense for a full 40 minutes to get this road win.
This is a team that I think right now is probably playing overall the most consistent basketball that they played this season. I don't know if I'd go with the best basketball, but all of a sudden, they're starting to creep into the conversation as a bubble team. Granted, it's a very weak bubble this year. But, as you mentioned, you look at their statistics, and, this is a team that really is going to cause, a little bit of issues for Carolina if they are able to shoot it as well as they've done it sometimes. Marquise Reed, like you said, he's a guy that really can take over games, and he caused us some issues last year. And then Shelton Mitchell, like you said, both of those guys were expected to go to the NBA and actually return. So there is talent on this team. And, you add in the fact that they are starting to go a little deeper. They're going 9 deep, which, again, we've talked about depth from Carolina's perspective with all the injuries. They're pretty much sticking with 8 deep now. We're seeing a little bit more of Andrew Platek here in the last couple of games, so maybe at the most 9 deep. But it's not like Carolina is going to be able to destroy them by going, 10 or 11 deep, and they're a team that's only going 6 or 7 deep. This is a team that does have a little bit of depth, but at the same time, you look at Carolina, and the talent level is definitely there, but you're getting into that late part of the schedule where you kind of wonder, is there a game where this team overlooks somebody? I don't necessarily think this is it, especially because I get that it's on the road, but Clemson is always one of those teams that every time that rivalry is talked about, they're going to talk about the fact that they've never won in the Smith Center. So I feel like, even though it is on the road, that's still going to kind of be in their heads, and they're still going to think, okay, look, Carolina is definitely the more dominant team. I think it's going to be an interesting game. Like you mentioned, it's a 6 o'clock start time, which is kind of interesting. But, I mean, I guess, looking at it, Clemson was a team that was ranked in the preseason, still a team that's on the tournament bubble. So I think overall it's a pretty interesting game on the road. But, again, this team so far hasn't lost a road game in conference. I think Carolina, everything stacks up well for them, and I think in the end they definitely are the favorite to win this game, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I don't foresee us overlooking a game the rest of the way because, we're battling to win the ACC. I mean, you lose Saturday, that pretty much that goes out the window with Virginia having the head-to-head. They are 7-0 on conference play. They have 2 road games left at Clemson and at Boston College, both winnable games. You're looking at going undefeated on the road in ACC play, I think, for the first time in almost a decade. Something since I think the 2008 Final Four team did that. So there's a lot on the line. And, if Virginia, who has to go to Syracuse on Saturday, slips up and Carolina wins out, there's your avenue to winning another ACC regular season championship for Roy Williams, which would be his 9th. I don't see Carolina overlooking this team. I think they're going to find a way to win. I think it's going to be one of those games where they don't play well, but they win. Clemson's very good defensively in the half court. They're going to slow the game down. So that means we have to take good shots and more importantly, make shots. I think we've gotten good shots in the last couple of games at Duke, against Florida State and against Syracuse. We just haven't done a good job making them. We're going to have to do that Saturday night in Little John Coliseum if we want to try to get the road win. But I think Kobe White's going to build off his performance against Syracuse. I think the confidence thing is going to be back for him, and I think he'll find a way to lead this team to another big win and keep Carolina in the hunt to win the ACC.
One of the good things that stacks up for Carolina is the fact that, they're going to hold the edge on the glass going in. They're going to be, going in, they're plus 8, roughly plus 8 over Clemson, because Clemson, they only average 35 rebounds a game.
Right.
Another thing for Clemson, you look, they average just 12 assists per game. So this is a team that really has to create on their own. And really, we've seen that, with just about every team so far this year that's had to do that against us. They haven't really been all that successful, including in the game against Duke. So I think that stacks up for Carolina very well. And, I guess, the weird start time at 6 o'clock, I guess, could be something, but they started at 3:45 against Florida State, and that didn't seem to throw anybody off. And they're going to have to be prepared, like you said, because somehow that game against Duke is a 6 o'clock start. So, this might be a little bit of a good preparation for them, learning to, I don't know how much of an adjustment it is, but, this is the new, quote, prime time spot for basketball on ESPN. So, they might have to get used to playing at that time slot, over the next couple of years. And I think this is a good team to be able to get, everything started against. I think Carolina wins, and I'll say probably somewhere in between the 10 to 12 range. I really just think that the talent will just be too much for Clemson to handle, and I really feel like Carolina is going to have a great night on the glass and advance to 24-5 and 14-2 in conference, and it should be a sprint to the finish. Now, at that rate, if Carolina takes care of everything that they have to do, it'll come down to that matchup against Duke, and we'll see if Virginia slips up.
Right, all right. So now we'll move to our final segment of the podcast, Beat the Buzzer. And this is where our discussion topic falls in for today's show. And we were kind of talking pre-air because we had an interview later on today with a special guest, and we're going to talk about this with him as well. After the Syracuse win, Roy Williams made the comment that Kobe White is the best scoring point guard he's ever coached in his now 31 years of coaching, and he's been back at Carolina for 16. Just Carolina alone, he's coached, guys that can score the ball. Ty Lawson comes to mind, Marcus Page and Joel Berry, probably your 3 best scoring point guards, and Roy said that Kobe White as a freshman is better than all of them. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because you had a very interesting take that kind of caught me by surprise.
I think he's the best all-around point guard that Roy has coached, and that's just mainly because you just look at how young he is. And, again, it's going to take a little bit of projecting forward because it looks like barring something very shocking, I don't think he's coming back because his draft stock just keeps getting higher and higher, and more than likely by the time we get around draft time, he's probably going to be in the top 10. So he'll end up probably going. But, when I look at him, just his ability to score the ball is just, it's unbelievable, especially for a freshman. And he's a guy that, currently holds 3 of the top 5 scoring performances by freshmen in Carolina history, which, you're talking about some guys that played as freshmen at Carolina that are just unbelievable, including Tyler Hansborough, who's only on that list one time now thanks to Kobe White. This guy has the ability to just dominate games, and, just watching him, he reminds me a little bit when it comes to the aggressiveness of Russell Westbrook. I don't think he's quite the rebounder that Westbrook's going to be, but, I think he will eventually be able to develop that part of his game where he becomes a guy that can get the ball to other players on the floor. I think, so far in his career, he really hasn't had to do that because, back at Goldsboro, he was clearly the guy. It was him, and I think I don't even know if anybody else on that team actually went D1. So clearly when they put the ball in his hands, his goal was to score on every possession. At Carolina, he's got some guys around him, and we've seen some moments where he is able to set guys up, but for the most part, I feel like he's also seeing that, look, he has the ability to take over some of these games in the ACC, and he's done just that. At the NBA level, things might be a little bit different, so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to develop that part of his game, but really just, when it comes to the Westbrook comparison, the ability to get up the floor so quickly, the ability to finish at the rim through contact, just such a strong player, especially for a freshman, and a guy that now has just become so deadly if you leave him wide open from 3. And he's taking some shots where even he has to create his own space and knocks threes down, just making it look easy. So I think overall, defensively, I think people still have some questions, but, from what I've seen from him, he's very active on the defensive end. And, he's had some moments where, early on in the season, I thought he was taken advantage of a little bit. But as we've gone through conference play, look at the game against Duke. I thought he did a phenomenal job against Trey Jones, who I know a lot of Tar Heel fans don't want to give any credit. This guy is a legit two-way player and probably going to be one of the best two-way players in this upcoming draft. So I think Kobe White, in my opinion, if you project forward just a little bit, I think he's probably the best point guard that Roy has coached since coming back to Carolina.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hold off on that just because he's got to produce in March. Then that's kind of how we gauge these guys. Look at the guys that are on this list. Felton, Lawson, Page, and Barry. They all 4 played in the national championship game. 3 of them have rings. So he's going to have to do something in March to kind of put his name in that level. I think talent-wise, he definitely has a case. Speed-wise, he's right there with Lawson. He's not as strong with the ball as Lawson was at the rim. But, of course, over time he can develop that strength. And I just think it's a lot saying, because, Roy doesn't say that just saying that to praise a kid, to make him feel good. Like, if he's saying that, he means it. I'm going to trust him with that. But, from my personal opinion, let me see what he does in March. If he takes this team to a Final Four or a national championship, then it's really going to be hard to argue that because he has 3 30-point scoring games. That's the most as a freshman in the history of the program. Not even Hansborough or Jordan or any of those guys did that, but Kobe White did. So he's definitely made a name for himself at Carolina and was likely to be a like you said, a one-year career because the money is going to be too hard to pass up. And we knew that when he signed because of his talent level. This could be a one-and-done guy with him and Nazir Little. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But a writer for GoHeels.com and co-host of the Carolina Insider, Adam Lucas, is joining us today. Adam, how's it going?
Doing well, guys. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, Anthony.
Yeah, doing well. So really quickly, I know this isn't one of the questions that's on there, but you got to tell us about working with Jones Angell. Like he's a great. He's a great, fun guy. He loves what he does. But you guys, you do the podcast together, and he's a little bit different in the podcast than he is on air, right?
I would say that's probably an accurate statement. I think maybe the podcast is a little less business-like than what he would need to do on the Tar Heel Sports Network. I think what a lot of people don't realize is so much of what you hear on the podcast, that's all him on the production side. We don't have a producer. We don't have somebody back in the studio who's putting in all that extra stuff that you hear, some of the calls, some of the songs, all that good stuff. That's all Joe's doing that. So a lot of times it's fun for me to listen back to it because I never really know what's going to be in there. And sometimes it takes me by surprise as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely a loyal listener. Love the stuff y'all do with your list. How can you justify that? The Roadhouse challenges are always pretty good. So you'll give us good content both about Carolina, and then like Anthony said, we get to learn a lot about you guys outside of Carolina athletics, which we also enjoy. So we'll go ahead and get to the interview part. And I just want your initial, your thoughts. I know it's been 2 days since the Syracuse game, but Carolina came back from behind at halftime with a much better effort in the second half. The defense wasn't as good as it had been the previous couple games, but it was enough to get the job done.
Yeah, well, I think kind of overlooked in that game is how well Syracuse played. I think a lot of Carolina teams from previous years would have lost that game because the Orange played really well. They needed a good win because, like they always are, they're kind of sitting right there on the fringe of the NCAA tournament. I think they're in, but I don't know how comfortable they feel. And that would have been a signature win for them. And you put a win at Carolina with the win at Duke that they already have, and all of a sudden you're feeling great about making it. And they played really well offensively. Made some very difficult shots. I don't know if they feel like they played that well defensively. I'm not sure. I think it's always tough when you play the way they do. But Carolina was just better. And they weren't a whole lot better, but they were enough better to get the win. And that was a good one because it locked up a 3 seed in the ACC tournament.
Well, one of the main reasons that Carolina was as successful as they were on the offensive end in the game against Syracuse was because Kobe White really just had another fantastic performance. I mean, now, there's 3 games so far this season as a freshman that he scored 33 or more points. When you look at Kobe White, Roy said it the other day that this is the best shooting point guard that he's ever had. We were talking about this a little bit in one of the earlier editions of the podcast. Do you think that Kobe White may actually be the best point guard that Roy has ever coached?
The best point guard that Coach Williams has ever coached? That's a good question. I think if we could be fortunate enough to see Kobe White for 3 years, like some of the other Coach Williams point guards have played, then I think he might put that to rest pretty easily. I think if the sample size ends up being more limited than 3 years, which certainly it may be, then I think it becomes more difficult just because of volume of work. I think we might be able to put this one season up against other seasons that individual Carolina point guards have had, but I don't know that I would be willing to go so far. It's just hard for me to say that without knowing how long he's going to play. But has he done things that nobody's ever done? Yes. And every time he shoots it off the catch, I think it's going in. And I think kind of the underrated thing he's done that hasn't got enough attention is that he's got Carolina playing at a faster pace than any other Roy Williams team has played at. And I think all of us would have said, nobody can play faster than Ty Lawson or Raymond Felton. Well, Kobe White's done it. And when Carolina gets more possessions, they tend to win games.
All right. Okay. So we'll follow up with that. And, we travel to Clemson on Saturday. They're kind of where Syracuse normally is, where they need a win to get their NCAA tournament resume more with a higher standing. What are your thoughts and the keys to get a win on the road in Little John?
I think that's going to be a tough game because I think this is most definitely a case where the opponent's got a lot more to gain from a win than Carolina does. Tar Heels would like to win. Certainly they're going to get on there trying to win, but they're not desperate to win the way that I think Clemson probably will be. Clemson really does need a signature win. That's something that's missing from their resume. They're going to muck it up and make it kind of ugly like they always do. They're pretty good defensively. They've got a lot of veteran players who have been there for a long time who also can score. Brad Brownell's a good coach. It'll be a relatively hostile environment. There'll be some Tar Heels down there at the Old John Coliseum, but it'll be predominantly orange. Clemson fans will pause from spring football just long enough to pay attention to this game. So I think it's a tough assignment. I think it's unrealistic to expect Carolina to continue to play at the level they've played at from now until hopefully the first week of April. So you're going to see a hiccup or two somewhere in there, and it wouldn't surprise me to see that at Clemson.
Well, right now, we haven't really shot well since that game against Wake Forest. I think the question that a lot of people have is, look, we're still winning games, but is that sustainable for a long period of time, or does something have to change if Carolina wants to make a deep run in March?
I think it depends on what you define as a long period of time. Carolina can't go to the Final Four or win a national championship shooting the ball poorly, because you can't beat good teams playing that way. I don't think Carolina's big enough or skilled enough in the paint to shoot 15% from the three-point line and win a regional final type game against one of the top 6 or 7 teams in the country. So, but that being said, I would expect Carolina to shoot the ball pretty well because they're diverse enough that they've got a lot of guys who can make that shot. I think you feel pretty good about Kobe White shooting it. Cameron Johnson shooting it as well as almost anybody has since the line's been in college basketball at Carolina. Luke May can step out there and knock it down. Kenny Williams can make that shot. So I think you've got enough guys that you're not dependent on one player making 5 or 6. You've got a couple who can maybe knock in 2 or 3, and I think as long as Carolina shoots it reasonably well, then I think they're a legitimate candidate to go deep into the tournament.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. When you look at it, I think one of the areas that we're kind of concerned about going into the tournament that, maybe we haven't been concerned about in past years is really depth. And I think that's because of the injuries. You got Leakey and Sterling, who have both missed now significant time. When you look at those two guys and right now where they stand, are we going to see these guys back on the court this season, or is there anything that you can really give us?
I certainly think the hope and the expectation is for them to play again at some point this year. The problem is everybody just heals at a different rate, and everybody can tolerate a different amount of pain. What I might say might be absolutely terrible. You might say, oh, it's not that bad, I'm ready to go. So you're never quite sure. I don't think we're to the point yet where they're going to warm up and then they'll evaluate it in warm-ups. We're not there yet. But we're getting closer, and I think you're right, certainly, especially Leaky Black, because he gives Carolina a lot of flexibility. He can do a lot of different things, and that's a piece that you're going to need in the postseason. And with Sterling, at some point you're going to need that backup post guy to come in and give you a few minutes, especially because we know Garrison Brooks is prone to getting into foul trouble. So you would like to have Sterling Manley available to come in, play a little defense, get a couple rebounds. And so both those guys, as you said, they're not going to start this year, but that depth is going to be valuable against the better teams down the road.
Adam, you're around this team day to day. What's one area you've seen this team drastically improve since the start of ACC play to now with a 13-2 record in conference?
I think it's got to be defensively. I mean, this team was getting scorched by just basic dribble drives back at the beginning of the season, and they looked like a lot of times they weren't quite sure what everybody else was doing on the court. And the last maybe 2-3 weeks, you can just see them communicating better. You can see the defensive rotations are better, and some of the technical things, some of the on-the-ball defense is better. And I don't think it's any coincidence that some opponents have started to have unusually poor shooting performances against Carolina. Some of that is luck, sure, but some of that also is that Carolina's gotten better on the defensive end, and that's something that Coach Williams has said since day one. This team's got to do better if they want to go as far as they want to go.
And lastly, we'll get you out on this. With Carolina already having locked up at least a top 3 finish in the ACC, does seeding matter for the ACC tournament? Like, is there a big difference if they get the 1 or the 3? Because it looks like if they're a 2 or 3 seed, they'll be facing Duke. Well, there's a potential for another Duke match in the semifinals for a 3rd straight year.
Yeah, I don't think there's much difference at all between a 2 and a 3, but I think there's a huge difference between a 1 and either a 2 or a 3. But unfortunately, the Tar Heels need somebody to jump up and get Virginia in order to make 1 realistic. And I'm not sure I see that with Virginia's schedule. those few minutes Carolina had to play against Virginia without Cam Johnson, that could very well end up deciding who claims that regular season championship and certainly the top seed in the tournament. And I think you're right. I think it is looking strongly likely that a Carolina-Duke game could happen on Friday night in Charlotte. That semifinal game last year in Brooklyn was a great one. I would expect a really good environment, even better than last year, if that game happens again in Charlotte. I've heard a couple people express the idea that they feel like this might be the year that Carolina and Duke play 4 times. And I'm not sure that I'm ready to rule that out yet. I don't necessarily want to ever see that happen, but this does feel like it's a year where that could be the case.
Adam, I do want to thank you for joining us, and I'll continue to check out your writing and the podcast with Jones. So thank you for your time today, buddy.
Hi, man. I appreciate it. If I can do anything, just let me know.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else you want to contribute to this podcast before we shut this down?
Nah, man, I think we're good to go.
All right. I want to encourage you guys to subscribe to this podcast through Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Check out the blog, where you can find the Roy's Boys blog on Facebook, Twitter, and Medium. And Anthony, I'll go ahead and give you a chance to promote the Heel Tough blog. I know you wrote something about the battles going into spring practice, which start, Sunday is when spring practice begins?
Yeah, spring practice opens on Sunday, and the best thing about it, from what I'm hearing from everything, and I'm going to try to get Lee Pace on the podcast to talk a little bit about it. They're going to have just unbelievable media availability this year. In the past, players were available maybe once a week. Now they're going to have guys available after every practice. Matt Brown will probably be available after every practice too. So we're going to know a little bit more about some of these battles that are going on. And you mentioned them. I mean, everybody knows the quarterback battle, but I got 4 other battles for you to watch. Also an honorable mention in there. Yeah, go ahead and check that out. And then the podcast be coming out soon. We're definitely going to be talking, about Chad Surratt's move to linebacker. And then we're also going to hit on those camp battles that we talked about. And, there'll also be a couple other things that we'll throw in there as well. Maybe a few recruiting notes. Hopefully there's something that comes out after last week's junior week or junior day. And there's also a couple of other big-time recruits that will be on campus this weekend. So, yeah, I mean, once again, like we talked about it, the storylines around Carolina football have been, just flowing in all off season, and it's no different right now. And now we're reaching that exciting time of year where we're in spring football. The hope is here, and believe it or not, we're just over a month away from the spring game in Kenan. So I think everybody's getting a little pumped for that. And if you're a football nut, just head on over. It's www.heeltoughblog, and you can check out everything that you need to know.
All right. I do want to thank you for co-hosting with me again today, and again taking the slack up Monday while I was down sick. But thank you for joining me. Well, thank you guys for listening, and go Tar Heels.
All right.